Welcome back. All right, I want to take a look at the standings. We're 5 months, a little past 5 months into the season. And of course, we've got a little over a month to go. So this will be the last standings video I do for the 2024-2025 season. I know I'm sad too. But I'm also excited because we are getting closer and closer to the playoffs. When you look at the amount of games that are left to be played, and you look at the amount of days left on the schedule, this is going to be a lot of hockey for a lot of these players. Now, we'll start with the East. The Florida Panthers are atop the division in the Atlantic. 64 games, 83 points. They have 34 regulation wins. I got regulation wins on the board because that is the determining factor about who does or doesn't make the playoffs, and seeding, that's your first determining factor. Now, the number in red that I have is the points percentage of teams from January 1st until now. The reason I did that is because the top three teams last year from January 1st until the end of the regular season were Carolina, Florida, and Edmonton. Notice Florida and Edmonton played each other in the playoffs. Teams that play well in the calendar year of the playoffs usually do pretty well come playoff time. One that everybody remembers, of course, is St. Louis. They were really bad and they were at the bottom of the league. Right. And then they had one of the best records in 2019. Rolled into the playoffs, rolled through the playoffs, and won their to-date only Stanley Cup. So for Florida, they have a 673 points percentage since January 1st. That's fourth overall in the National Hockey League. So if you're a Florida Panthers fan, good news. They're playing really, really well, both overall and since January 1st. For Toronto, 63 games, 79 points. They have 31 regulation wins. So they've fallen 4 points behind Florida. They do have a game in hand. 620 points percentage. That's ninth since January 1st. So their overall numbers, not bad, but they're ninth since January 1st. The Tampa Bay Lightning, 63 games, 78 points. So just 1 point back of Toronto. This fight could go right to the end. 32 regulation wins for Tampa. So if these teams are tied at the end of the season, by regulation wins right now, Tampa Bay would have the advantage. They have a 621 points percentage since January 1st, putting them eighth, just 1 percentage point ahead of the Toronto Maple Leafs. So who doesn't want to see that in the playoffs? I mean, there might be some Toronto fans putting up their hands going, we'd rather not see Tampa, but unless they find a way to pass Florida, that's very much likely, right? Although Tampa Bay's been playing really well, who knows? Maybe Tampa Bay finishes first and Florida plays Toronto in the first round. That'd be all right, right? Anyways, going out to the Metro now, the Washington Capitals, 64 games, 92 points, 35 regulation wins, a 741 points percentage, which is first. And hey, look at this. They are tied with Winnipeg in points. They have a game in hand. Washington could win the President's Trophy. There you go. This is not the first time they've done that. And their points percentage since January 1st is first. 741 is the points percentage. So we can have the whole discussion about the President's Trophy and the jinx that it is at some point soon. And yeah, that seems to happen every playoffs, right? So anyways, we'll see if Washington maintains that pace. Carolina, 64 games, 80 points, 80 points, 33 regulation wins. Their points percentage since January 1st at 630, they are sixth. So last year they were first, and they did not go that far in the playoffs. They're looking to go a little further this year, and it looks like they've got a date with the New Jersey Devils, although there are a couple of teams that could threaten that spot. New Jersey, 65 games, 74 points, 30 regulation wins. Everything looks good, but since January 1st, a 460 points percentage, that's 25th. So New Jersey has been in a bit of free fall since the 1st of January. We know about all the injuries and all the setbacks, and so, yeah, New Jersey, not necessarily a huge surprise. They are currently 6 points above the playoff line. Maybe they're not as secure in that playoff spot as we would have thought, say, 2 weeks ago, a month ago. Columbus, the number one wild card, they've only played 63 games. Noteworthy because they've got games in hand on both New Jersey and Carolina. 70 points. 4 points back of the New Jersey Devils, although they don't have the tiebreaker. They have 23 regulation wins. 640 points percentage since January 1st. That's fifth overall in the National Hockey League. So pretty strong numbers for Columbus since the 1st of January. Ottawa, 62 games, 69 points, 23 regulation wins. Their 558 points percentage, tied with three other teams for 14th. So For the Ottawa Senators, it has been a very up and down experience. I've talked about this lately, and Ottawa's hoping to hold on to that spot. And then there's the Rangers. The Rangers, 64 games, 68 points, 29 regulation wins. They had a rough weekend. However, since January 1st, a 625 points percentage, that's 7th overall over that time period. The New York Rangers have played very well since the 1st of January. And while this past weekend they did suffer a couple of losses, an overtime loss against Ottawa, and then yesterday they got clubbed by Columbus. What makes this look worse is, of course, that Ottawa and Columbus are the teams that are trying to chase down and pass for a playoff spot, but there's still 18 games left for them. It does hurt their chances a little bit that teams ahead of them have games in hand, but it's not that many either. So those teams still have to win those games in hand. Detroit, 63 games, 66 points, 22 regulation wins, so they don't have the tiebreaker on anybody above the playoff line. But since the 1st of January, a 615 points percentage is 10th. Yes, they're trending in the wrong direction. Absolutely. They've lost 5 in a row. They are the most hot and cold team, I think, this season. Where when they're hot, they look fantastic. And when they're cold, it's the Keystone Cops and Benny Hill out there. So I have no idea what to expect from Detroit down the stretch, but they got 19 games left to try to get on this side of the board to make the playoffs for the first time in quite some time. Montreal, 63 games, 66 points, 21 regulation wins. Their points percentage the same as Ottawa, 558 points percentage. That's 14th since the 1st of January. I still don't think they end up making the playoffs, but they're in the mix. And if you're a Montreal fan, that's all you're going to be worried about. And it bodes well for the future. A lot of the good young guns are playing for them, so there you go. Boston, who have signaled their rebuilding intentions with the moves made at the deadline, 65 games, 66 points. This is where I kind of get a little bit antsy when I'm watching the broadcasts, and it's usually on the U.S. side of the broadcast, where they will say, Boston's only 3 points back of a playoff spot. Right, but they've played 3 more games than Ottawa. Gets very difficult. They have 22 regulation wins, and then when you look at the trend, since January 1st, they have a 423 points percentage. That's 29th overall in the NHL. So Boston has been trending away from the playoffs since the 1st of January, and I mean, they're not making it. And if they thought they had a real chance at making it, I think Marchand would still be there. But there it is. And Carlo would likely still be there as well. The New York Islanders, 63 games, 65 points, 23 regulation wins. But hey, while they missed out on a chance to jump past these 3 teams with a win last night, they do have a 600 points percentage since the 1st of January. That's 12th overall in the National Hockey League. So they've got their points. They've been doing well. Do they have enough runway left? They're 4 points back of a playoff spot. They've played 1 more game than Ottawa. We shall see. The 23 regulation wins bodes well, means if they win some more by the time they reach that line, if Ottawa has any struggles, see what I'm getting at, they should have the tiebreaker there if that takes place. Philadelphia. So now we're into the teams that are not making it. Philadelphia, 65 games, 62 points, 17 regulation wins. Their 444 points percentage since January 1st is 27th overall. So not really a surprise that Philadelphia's not making it. Pittsburgh, 66 games, 60 points, 17 regulation wins. Their points percentage since the 1st of January, 389. That is 31st overall in the National Hockey League. So Washington and Pittsburgh were usually tied at the hip in the standings at the opposite ends. Almost completely opposite. I do see you, San Jose. I understand. But Pittsburgh is right near the bottom of the East. Only 6 points back of Pittsburgh with 4 games in hand, the Buffalo Sabres. This is the other thing, too. I'll go back to Pittsburgh for a second. I've heard, Pittsburgh's 9 points back. Right, but they've played 4 more games than Ottawa. That's the thing that the announcers never talk about, the Pittsburgh games. Buffalo, 62 games, 54 points, 20 regulation wins for Buffalo. 458 points percentage since the 1st of January. That's 26th. So, I mean, they've almost been as good as New Jersey over that time period, but they're nowhere near a playoff spot, and they're not going to get there. They're currently 15 points back of Ottawa. So they're not mathematically eliminated as of yet. There isn't anybody who's been mathematically eliminated yet, but we're going to see a couple of teams getting mathematically eliminated soon enough. So that's your East. Let's go ahead and go out to the West. Let me go ahead and write down a timestamp for that. All right, out West, Winnipeg, 65 games, 92 points, 36 regulation wins. The 36 regulation wins, the largest number of any team in the National Hockey League. Their 7-12 points percentage since the 1st of January is 3rd in the National Hockey League. So very, very strong numbers from Winnipeg. But then there's Dallas right beneath them. Dallas, 64 games, 86 points, 35 regulation wins. So the same as Washington, one more than Florida, same as Vegas, one less than Winnipeg. And their points percentage since the 1st of January, 732. That is 2nd in the National Hockey League. So if the top 2 teams in the National Hockey League since January 1st met in the final, it'd be Washington against Dallas. So there you go. If you're thinking, well, I don't, maybe the teams under them, that'd be Winnipeg and Florida in your final. The Colorado Avalanche, 64 games, 78 points, 33 regulation wins. Since the 1st of January, they have the same points percentage as Detroit, 615 points percentage, which is 10th, and shows just how the perception can be quite different from one week to the next. If I had told people, hey, Detroit's got the same points percentage as Colorado since January 1st, there might be some people going, I have to check that on my phone. I'm not sure that's correct. Vegas, 63 games, 82 points. They're now 4 points clear in the race for first place in the Pacific, 35 regulation wins. Since the 1st of January, a 558 points percentage. That is 14th. And the Pacific does not have a team that's really done fantastically since January 1st. In fact, the Oilers, 63 games, 78 points, 27 regulation wins, and their points percentage since the 1st of January, 596. That's 13th. So they're good numbers, just not, along the same lines as, say, Washington or Winnipeg or, these teams that are at the top. The LA Kings, 62 games, 75 points, 29 regulation wins. So they do have that tiebreaker on Edmonton. Should they catch Edmonton, they know they have one game in hand on Edmonton, and they're 3 points back. So they had all those games in hand. You have to win them. It wasn't that long ago they had 3 games in hand and they were 4 points back. Now they have one game in hand and they're 3 points back. So they didn't get the wins where they needed them there. Their points percentage since the 1st of January, 538. That's 18th in the National Hockey League. So the top 3 teams in the Pacific have had some struggles here and there. Then you get to Minnesota. Oh, Minnesota. 64 games, 76 points, 23 regulation wins. So now they're 2 points back of Colorado for 3rd, and it feels like it might as well be 20 points. Since the 1st of January, a 500 points percentage. That is 23rd in the National Hockey League over that time period. A 500 record will get them into the playoffs, but in the first round right now, you'd have Minnesota against the Vegas Golden Knights. So I don't see Minnesota knocking off Vegas. I see Minnesota going out in the first round again if that was to take place. Calgary, who would be the opponent for Winnipeg. Remember 2020. Don't count Calgary out. 63 games, 70 points, 24 regulation wins. And I say that because Calgary knocked Winnipeg out in the play-in round. But the 519 points percentage Calgary's put up since the 1st of January is 22nd in the National Hockey League. So neither of the wild cards have been exactly playing fantastic hockey, which has left the door open for some teams on this side of the board. Not that any of them have an excellent record since the 1st of January either, leading to a really interesting race for the final playoff spot. So you've got Vancouver, 63 games, 69 points, 23 regulation wins, and in points percentage since the 1st of January, they are 500, 23rd in that period in time. So people get mad at me about where I have the Canucks on the power rankings, but they are 23rd in points percentage since the 1st of January. So I think that leaves them exactly where I currently have them on the power rankings board. So that works. And then you've got Capitals fans are angry. So the St. Louis Blues, 65 games, 69 points for them. So they only sit 1 point back, but the Flames have 2 games in hand on the St. Louis Blues. 22 regulation wins for the Blues. Pause for a drink from my beverage. The 558 points percentage for St. Louis is 14th, tied with the Vegas Golden Knights, tied with Montreal, and tied with Ottawa, which is why it's so hard to catch up because so many teams have the same amount of points over a time period. But St. Louis is doing their best. The fact they've played 2 extra games, they have the 22 regulation wins. It's a little dicey, but they could very well end up finishing ahead of Calgary. We shall see. Utah, 63 games, 66 points, 20 regulation wins. Since the 1st of January, 538 points percentage, which is 18th, the same points percentage as the LA Kings over that same time period. Utah has some momentum right now. We're going to see over the next 19 games whether or not they're able to overcome the deficit. They are currently sitting 4 points back of a playoff spot, no games in hand, so they need Calgary to lose some games, and they need to win while they're at it. Anaheim, 63 games, 63 points, 20 regulation wins, but their points percentage since the 1st of January, 537, that's 20th. I think Duck fans everywhere will take that. Yep, we like 20th. It's been a long time since Anaheim was a dangerous team, but recently they've looked like a dangerous team. You look at what they did last night against the Islanders, that was pretty good. So we'll see what happens in the upcoming weeks. They have 19 games left. Seattle. So now we're into the teams we know aren't going to make it. You can argue that Anaheim's 7 points back. The math gets really dodgy because they also have to pass 4 teams to get there, but Seattle's not making it. 65 games, 58 points, 22 regulation wins, and since the 1st of January, a 407 points percentage. That is 30th in the National Hockey League over that time. Nashville, 63 games, 55 points, 20 regulation wins, and since the 1st of January, 520 points percentage, which is 21st. So they're a points percentage ahead of Calgary over that same time period, but they had so much ground to try to cover that they're still 15 points back of a playoff spot in the West. But if you're an optimist and you believe that Nashville just got off to a really brutal start and they're better than their record, that would tell you might be right. Chicago, 64 games, 49 points, 17 regulation wins for them this season. Their 442 points percentage since the 1st of January is 28th, which is better than 32nd, and there have been parts of this season where they've been 32nd. That role currently belongs to San Jose. 65 games, 43 points, 12 regulation wins. 12 regulation wins, 17 overall. Their points percentage since the 1st of January, dead last in the National Hockey League at 300. So San Jose, a lot of work to be done there. They sit 6 points back of Chicago. So if we're looking at the draft lottery right now, best odds would go to San Jose, then Chicago, then Buffalo, followed by Nashville. So that'll be your top 5 in likelihood. But look for, I still think Boston's going to drop. I know they beat Tampa Bay in a shutout and everything, but I still think they're going to drop. Seattle's probably going to drop as well. And maybe the Islanders, because losing Brock Nelson, I feel like, is a huge blow to that team's chances, even though their record has been not too bad recently. And their 600 points percentage since January 1st has been pretty good. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And actually, before we get through that, let's look at the playoff matchups currently. So Washington would be against Ottawa. That would be entertaining. Florida would be against Columbus. That would be fantastic. Toronto would be against Tampa. That would be stressful for Toronto and Tampa fans. I would enjoy it greatly. And Carolina would be against New Jersey, which it feels like has been the likeliest matchup in the first round out of everything in the East. Then you go over to the West. Winnipeg would be against Calgary, as I previously mentioned. Vegas would be against Minnesota. We'd see Dallas and Colorado, which could be a bloodbath. And then Edmonton and the LA Kings, which we've seen that a couple of times, I think. I think we've seen that. How recently have we seen Edmonton and LA? It just feels like they're destined to play each other every single year. At one point this season, it looked like Edmonton, probably going to win the division. We should be able to avoid LA and Edmonton in the first round. Now it looks less likely to be avoidable because Calgary's 5 points back of LA. I don't think they catch LA. Vancouver's 6 points back of LA. I can't see them catching LA either. So we very likely get Edmonton, LA in the first round again. Let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support as always. Should be a fun finish to the season. I will talk to you again soon.